Miss, the Ironbridge Gorge Museum in Shropshire. The 655 Special, which tonight takes Sally James and David Soul to a corner of Britain which American visitors usually miss. The Ironbridge Gorge Museum in Shropshire.
Welcome to Ironbridge Gorge in Shropshire. This is where the Industrial Revolution began more than 200 years ago. And this, the first iron construction bridge in the world, is a symbol of that epic era. Incidentally, this bridge cost less than £3,000 to put up, and since it was built, it's become a major international tourist attraction. All around here are reminders and relics of the days when Britain really did shape the industrial future of nations. David is out and about soaking up the history of it all, and will be reuniting two men who themselves caused something of a revolution in industrial relations. But first, some music from the Abraham Darby School Band.
(1776), the year the United States won its independence from Great Britain. And itself started out on a whole new era, a new experiment in self-determination. And I suppose for the next 200 years, an unparalleled industrial growth. But that industrial growth got its beginning right here in Coalbrookdale, the birth of the Industrial Revolution, where the iron used to create the world's first iron bridge was smelted right here. And the key to that Industrial Revolution was the changeover from the use of charcoal to the use of the hotter and cheaper coke in smelting processes. For that, we have to thank Abraham Darby. Hold on a second. You know, we often mark growth and progress by great discoveries and inventions which hopefully are of benefit to people. But also, what of the toll that's taken on those human beings who have, over the past couple of hundred years, toiled to make these advances possible? What was exacted from them? There's an old saying in these parts that hard work never killed anybody, but by God, it sure crippled a few. The temperature in this cavern was a cool 1,000 degrees centigrade. And the iron ore and the coke and the lime were all poured in from where you're looking at me, and then it was drawn off, the molten iron was drawn off. Men would work 12-hour shifts, up to 24-hour shifts, to bring in 20 tons of iron a week. Wow. That was the 18th century. I wonder what conditions were like for the working man in the iron and coal industry, say, even in our living memory.
Well, 50 years ago was when I first started work. And I can tell you, conditions in the pits, for example, were pretty grim. Safety regulations weren't quite as solid as they are today, and you know, dust and all the rest of it was part of the environment and accepted as part of the environment. Pithead baths were a non-entity. What did we talk about?
Joe Gormley, former president of the Mine Workers Union. How did you get involved in this career of yours?
Well, it was never intended, first of all, that I would even enter the pits.
Oh, no?
My mother and father had ambitions that I wouldn't go to the pits. And I was taking examinations to go to what they call further education, the grammar school. And a couple of incidents happened that made it impossible for me to carry on. First of all, I heard my mother and father talking. They didn't know I was listening. Wondering what the hell was going to happen if I passed the test, passed the examination. Because they couldn't afford the boots, they couldn't afford the uniform. So I was a bit worried then. And the following morning, when the headmaster came, the whole lot of us who were doing homework, although I don't mind right, I said, no way am I carrying this bloody lot on. So I went to this brook the same night and just
chucked them away,
my books into the brook and sailed merrily away, and that did my niece me.
Were you ever sad that you didn't go on?
I was early on sad that I hadn't had this chance, but again, later on I realized that it didn't was a great hindrance anyway.
No.
The natural ability came through anyway, so...
You've always been one for a common sense approach to most everything anyway, haven't you?
Well, I've always looked at the point of view that there are two ways to an objective, two ways to solve a problem. There's one that creates a lot of aggro, or there's a way that you can talk about in a sensible way and come to what I call a sensible conclusion to a problem.
You know, it just occurred to me when we were talking about conditions that there must have been some sort of entertainment values other than a pub, for instance. Music. What was music like?
Miners have always been very musical people. Of all kinds.
Brass bands, for instance, have been involved with mines.
Brass bands.
Why brass bands?
I don't know. All I can say is that somewhere or another, brass bands became associated with coal mining. Maybe because they knew the miners liked to blow their own trumpet. I don't know. It may be because they liked a lot of other music as well. But brass bands became the focal point of most of the cultural activities of miners.
As a tourist, I've been fortunate to visit hundreds of museums throughout the world. And though I enjoy visiting relics of the past, I'm often left cold by facts and artifacts. But what amazes me so much about this whole Ironbridge area is that the past has actually come alive in the present. Instead of allowing the skeletons of the Industrial Revolution to lie and rot, the people of the beautiful Severn Valley are rebuilding stone by stone, cog by cog, not only a unique museum, but a working community as it was more than a century ago. Home in America, where I sometimes feel we've been too consumed with and consumed by progress for its own sake. A young boy recently told me that he didn't think we cared much about the past because nobody takes care of it. Well, I'd like to bring that youngster here to Ironbridge, and a few adults as well, I might add, for a lesson in living history from which we can all learn something, not only for today, but more importantly, for the future of our children. These candles only come in 2 colors?
That's right, the old tallow dips. The green ones were for use only down the mines. If you had a green candle at home, it was obviously stolen from the pits. A mark of ownership.
I see. And you get sacked if you're following them at home?
If you were found with them at home, you were sacked.
Clever devils. Thank you. Oh?
Hello there.
Oh, hey, Joe, what do you know? You must be the toll keeper.
I am the toll keeper, yes.
See, I suppose I have to pay to get through here.
You will, I'm afraid.
Oh, what do I owe you?
Well, 2 bob?
2 bob.
Yes.
How much is that?
2 shillings.
Uh-huh. Or?
10 pence today.
10 pence, that's highway robbery. Cozy.
It is?
This be the average house for a mine worker or an iron worker?
No, it's above average, this. Very good accommodation in those
I
days.
suppose with all the money you're collecting on the street, you can afford to build a house like this, huh?
Well, Telford thought so.
You've been up and down those a few times, I imagine, huh?
Oh, for 30 years, I was going up and down one of those different pits. You know, when you're Sonny, you realize you're looking at one of the last relics of a great industrial scene around here. There used to be thousands of miners and lots of pits working in this area, which really was coinciding with the Iron Age, which, you know, Ironbridge is supposed to represent. So this is one of the last traditions, and the last pit in this area only closed 3 years ago.
Is that right?
So it's as recent as that, so coal mining finished in this area.
Yeah.
Which is the industry I was involved in anyway. And, you see, Sandy, it brings you back a lot of memories.
Yeah, it must.
30 years is not easy to wipe away, you know. Different levels of...
Tell me about your family. Tell me about your family, Joe.
When I was... my father was brought over from Ireland by his father to work in the fields and then in the pits in Lancashire. I was the middle of 7 kids. And being the middle of 7 kids, of course, you had to fight like holy hell
To hold your own, huh?
well, to get your half egg and make sure you got your half egg you were entitled to on a Sunday morning.
Half an egg?
Oh, Christ. And that created self-confidence that you were able to fight for your own corner.
Is that the beginning of your...
I think it stood me in good stead because I learned here to deal with people, for example.
Yeah.
Our fellow was a bit of a rough one.
Is that the only thing that's necessary to deal with people, is to be able to hold your own?
Well, no. We've got to be a psychologist a little bit at the same time. To be able to, I say, perhaps argue your way out of problems. That you learn that early on in life, and it grows up with you.
Even as
confidence.
Even as a young miner, your mates considered you to be somewhat of a leader. Did you ever question or doubt your own ability to lead?
No, funny enough, never at any time did I ever consider I couldn't do the job with the lad who invited me to be the leader. And that happened at many levels, from being a young lad all the way through the pits up to being national president. I never doubted I could do it.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that whatever I do in the future, I'll be able to do it. Huh?
You've said often, or it's been said, that you don't believe in revolution. You believe more in compromise and negotiation. What do you think a man like Sir Derek Ezra would say about that?
He was a very tough negotiator, skillful and shrewd, and he used to fight for all he could get whenever we got into the negotiating room, and we needed all our wits about us to come to a reasonable solution. But having said that, what really united us was that behind that, he really fought for the industry as hard as I did.
Yes, you were both aiming for the same thing, really.
That's right.
Yeah. Would you like to sit down and we can pursue this conversation?
All right.
Hello, gentlemen. Shall I be Mum?
Would you do that, please?
Righty-ho, tea?
A lot of my critics would have said I was too soft. So there's a difference of opinion. I just thought that I had a job to do and I had to do it. I did it on behalf of the people who I represented, the miners. And whether I was tough, skillful, or too soft, at least I can brag that we, during a term of office together in the last 11 years, we made more progress for the miners, for the wage and conditions, and also for the coal industry, security of employment, than at any time in the history of the coal industry. So, whichever one describes me or not, it is a fact of life that together, working together, we created a different situation.
You did have this marvellous relationship, didn't you? Although you were on opposite sides of the negotiating table, it did seem this sort of great closeness and both striving for the same thing. Do you think that was a unique relationship?
Well,
Derek?
it was the industry that brought us together. The coal industry, of course, is rather a special industry because great loyalties build up in it. And it doesn't really matter whether you're a mine worker or a manager.
Respect between the two of you developed. Was it something that was instant?
I think it was, really. We went through this very difficult period of the two strikes of 1972 and 1974, which were really not of our doing. I mean, it resulted from a combination of external circumstances. But what we were able to do was recover very quickly from that situation and then start building as soon as the opportunity arose. And from that moment on, we worked very closely together. What we were able to achieve, I think, was something quite unique in post-war British industry. We were able, as a result of this plan, which we devised together, not only to improve the working conditions and earnings of the mine worker, but also to improve the efficiency of the industry. In other words, we were able to do the two things. And that was something which I believe will be written about in the history books.
Well, the effects of the industrial revolution, of course, is still going on today. And David, in America, the situation with the Indians is something that's very close to your heart, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think on a personal level, I'm sitting here fascinated with sort of the historic meeting of these two men. And then I think of the effects of the Industrial Revolution in our country and how sometimes we glamorize the industry and we talk about building up industry and protecting at the same time the rights and the wage levels and so forth of the working man. But what concerns me also about the growth of industry in our country, particularly coal, is the fact that it has a way of denying the rights sometimes of people who live indigenously in an area because there is a need for coal and oil, or we are told there is a need for coal and oil.
Well, David, you see, your country is completely different. Here we have a nationalized industry. Coal industry is part of the energy scene. And whilst we don't have a coordinated energy policy yet, we're all working towards our objective of having a self-sufficiency for energy, including the coal and all the rest of it. In America, of course, it's all privately owned. And what's happening in America, to me, is raping an industry. For instance, in the Midwest states, I was listening to Tony together last night, when the oil position got worse, they gave permission to just rip up the whole middle of America to get it out. That's the creative call. It didn't matter then we owned the land or didn't own the land. It was these big multinational companies who were given permission to rape that land, to the detriment of the other sections of the coal industry in America, where millions and millions of coal will be sterilized if they're not very careful because they're more difficult to get at than those air gradients that we're talking about in those Midwest states. And that, I think, is a crime against the American society.
Well,
and they'll find out, not in our time, but in the years to come, they'll be regretting the decision that have allowed that to happen. Now, the Indians were affected because they lived there for thousands and thousands of years. And if there was going to be a rape, at least they were entitled to a damn good share of that.
I think what concerns me most is that if we do this to indigenous people, that eventually we are going to do it to ourselves.
Yes.
Which brings me to a question that I'd like to ask you. You gentlemen have dealt for years and years in the Industrial Revolution, right in the heart of it, in protecting people's wages and building an industry. We're now moving out of an industrial revolution, in the age of industrial revolution, into technological.
That's right.
How are we going to cope with that and deal? What are the problems that we're going to have to face, and how can what has gone in the past help us into that new age?
The problem, of course, is said to be that this could result in less employment. I think if technology is handled the right way, it could maintain employment, but
you'd have to work at 65.
I think so too.
You shouldn't have to work 5 or 6 days a week. You shouldn't need to work as many days and hours in a week that are necessary to create the wealth that we all need to make society good for the lot of us. And use all those techniques that we're talking about.
Can I just finally, very briefly ask you, Joe, you've been elected to the House of Lords now. Do you think that will be a great help to you to be able to achieve more things?
Well, what it does mean is that I'll have a voice, I'll have a platform for a voice to be pushing the same issue that I was able to push when I was president of the NUM and working for industry in general in Britain. I am to believe in Britain, and I should be doing all I can in the House of Lords to make sure that we get the best out of industry. We get the best possible human relations. We get the best energy policy, all with that common objective of making Britain the leading light in Europe and then part through that to the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you both very much.
One last thing.
Yeah?
I've been sitting here noticing that the three of us are all wearing hats. And
yeah.
I've taken a particular liking to yours, Joe. I think it would look a lot better on me.
Is this compromise or negotiation?
I'm not sure.
We'll just have a trial, Chuck.
It's kind of nice. Could I try yours, Sir Derek?
Certainly.
Thank you.
They're tough negotiators, these two, David. You're coming out of your league.
I'll tell you what. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's a pleasure doing business with you.
Well, I'm
So you've got to watch these Americans.
My goodness. Glad I didn't have to negotiate with you.
That's the third this week, I bet.
Well, it's going to be the fourth then.